Now I gotta ask you this, have you been wanting to put up a floating shelf, but you just didn't know how to do it, and you thought it would just be too doggone difficult? Well, today, I'm gonna show you step by step how to put up a floating shelf that you can stand back from, and you'll be proud that you did it. So stay tuned, because we're gonna jump right into it. Hi everybody, I'm Leah of seejanedrill, and at the top of the video I talked about a floating shelf. I gotta tell you, they're pretty simple to install, but there are things that you need to know before you attempt it, and that is, where is the plumbing inside that wall, and is there any electrical? Because you certainly don't want to be drilling through an electrical cable or your plumbing. Now in today's video I'm going to show you how to avoid all that and install a floating shelf. All right, this is our butcher block board here. Now, before we get started, you need to determine where your pins are going to go. So what do I mean by pins? Well, the pins are what the board is going to slide onto. Now, I got to tell you this. Many of you know that I worked on new homes. And whenever we would put in a fireplace mantle, we would use rebarb and epoxy, and we would slide that mantle onto the rebarb, and that's what holds the mantle in place. But here's the thing, you don't want to do something like that with a floating shelf, and the reason for that is a fireplace mantle, that's a permanent structure, and when you're installing a floating shelf, well, you may change your mind later down the road, so you want something that you can easily put on and pull off, but there'll be enough tension to hold that shelf in place. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to set pins in the studs, and then we're going to drill holes in our shelf and slide it onto the pins. The wall behind us, it has studs set at 24 inches on center. And normally, you would see 16 inches on center. That's what's typical with a wall like this. This is called the bottom plate, and these are called studs. Studs are vertical, plates or horizontal, okay? There's something called stud center, and what that means is that the center of one stud, I'm gonna mark it right here, okay? That's the center of that stud, okay? The center of that stud to the center of the next stud, to our next stud here, the center of that is 16 inches. That's what they mean when they say 16 inches on center. But ours, 24 inches on center. Now what that means is from the center of one stud to the center of the next stud is 24 inches. What that tells me is, since I'm hanging a shelf that's going to be 6 feet long, I have to put in 3 posts, because I'll have 3 studs to attach to. All right, it's time for us to start marking our studs. Now to do that, I'm going to use a tool called a Walabot. And it's going to really help determine what's inside this wall, because I don't know. There may be something beyond the wooden studs. There could be plumbing there. There could be electrical wires. And I want to make certain that the only thing that I'm drilling into is the wooden studs. So let me show you what this tool is and how it works. What I want to do is I want to show you where the Walabot really excels when you're trying to detect plumbing, pipes in the wall, or electrical wires, where a regular stud finder just can't perform in the same way. So I've got a mock wall here that I created for my class, and it's going to show some, it shows copper pipes and a drain. So let's see what the Walabot sees. This right here is my smartphone. A couple ways you can do it. They can work in concert with each other but separately, or there's a magnet here, and there's a magnet on the back of my smartphone. We're going to start the calibration process, right, by making slow circles. And it's going to tell us when it's calibrated. There we go. All right, I've got my Walabot here attached to my cell phone. The Walabot is behind it. Now I'm going to scoot to my right and pick up that stud there. There you go, folks. It's identifying it, and it can identify stud center as well. Now I'm going to pull back to my left and see what it does when we come in contact with the plumbing. Well, there you go. It's picked up the copper pipe. We're going to continue to the left and see if it picks up the drain. It's picking up the drain as well. We're at the electrical mock-up now, and I'm going to show you how the Walabot picks up wires very quickly and easily inside the cavity of the wall. Now I want to tell you this. With the first plumbing mock-up, the two were together and in tandem. But you know what? You can separate them and still use them. So on the electrical mock-up, let me show you how that's done. All right, we've got our Walabot on our electrical wall, and what I know is that there's an electrical cable that's running across here. Now, as you can see, we're starting off on a stud, and we're going to slide to the right to see if we can pick up that wire. So we're sliding to the right here. As you can see, we've picked up that wire that's traveling across, and nothing could be easier. Sometimes you have a wire that's traveling along a stud. In our case, however, we have a wire that's going through the stud. And in a case like this, you want to turn on the expert mode on your Walabot. So we're going to hit this button here, and we've turned on the expert mode. Now, you see a red blob here. It's picking up the stud, and we're going to see as we travel upward whether or not we get that blob to separate. And when it separates like that, what that tells us is, in the Walabot in expert mode, picks up a stud and the wire traveling across the wall. Now, Walabot provided the visual stud finder, the DIY2. You can see this is the Walabot here. They've got a charging cable. They also included a nice little case that you can, slide your Walabot into, close it up, zip it. Well, they provided a nice little bag so that if you're giving it away as a gift, well, there you go. You don't have to wrap it. Okay, now that we've got the studs marked, it's time to take a drill and drill a pilot hole. Now the pilot holes are going to really allow us to drive our lag bolts in. Now this is a lag bolt, and if you notice, I've got a little flag here because it's going to let me know when I need to stop because I don't want to drive the lag bolt all the way through the stud. Maybe many of you are thinking, well, wait a second, how's that going to be a pin if you've got the, head on the back? We're just going to slice it off. We're going to use an angle grinder to cut the end off so that we have an open pin to slide our shelf on. Okay, now how this works is you want to place your shelf up atop the pins, okay? And you want to make certain that it's eye appealing. You want the same amount at one end that you have here at the other end. Now it's time to mark on our wood where our pins go. Now that that's resting on top, you just take a pencil here, strike a line, then I'll continue, come over here, strike a line, and then we get our last pin, strike a line. That lets us know exactly where we need to drill into our shelf so that everything is perfectly centered. Now you want to make certain that you have nice, crisp reference lines like that there. And we're going to want to find the center point from reference line, the reference line, and then from the bottom of the board to the top of the board, you want to find the exact center. There. Now you've got to make certain that you keep your drill nice and straight. We've got all our holes drilled and we've got our pins up. Now we just have to, put it in place. Now this is a butcher block shelf, so it is pretty heavy. I'm going to need a little help. So you may need help as well getting your board up on the pins. Don't be afraid to ask for a little help, folks. So let's do this. What I've got here is a block of wood and a dead blow hammer. Now I'll go to the center. I want to use the wood to protect the edge of the shelf here.
With a dead blow hammer, set the shelf onto the pins by giving them a firm, controlled blow.
So maybe you're thinking, Leah, I really love the floating shelf, but I don't have the tools to install a floating shelf. And I really like the whole butcher block look of the shelf. Well, here's the thing. You know, they design a bracket specifically for that butcher block shelf because you need something real beefy and strong to carry the weight. And it'll also give it a more contemporary look if that's the route you want to go. I want to thank Walabot for sponsoring today's video. This is Leah saying, you can do this. See you next time.